Hey everybody, my name is Eric Comley. I'm the Garrett County 4-H Youth Development Agent, and this is 4-H Career Conversations. Today I have with me Sabrina Hounshell, and she is a professional portrait and wedding photographer. And I wanted to talk to her a little bit about what she does and about her career. But as I do with most people, I want to start out before you became everything that you are now as far as photography is concerned. And I want to find out, first of all, hi, Sabrina. How are you doing?
Hi, good.
Yeah. And this one is a little bit more personal for me because Sabrina is a former 4-H'er of mine, and I absolutely take no credit for her success. She did everything on her own, and I just happened to be around when she was growing up and being an amazing person. So as you were growing up, let's ask the question, Sabrina, what is it that you remember wanting to be when you grew up?
I don't know that I necessarily knew what I wanted to be, but my sister and I did a lot of creative play as kids. Like we would play like house, but we would also play travel agent. Like I built a computer out of popsicle sticks and we would sit there for hours and like plan trips for people, which is super crazy. And then my mom encouraged us to be like very creative. So at one point there's some woods behind my parents' house and my sister and I would be tour guides through the woods, and we set up a little gift shop in the gazebo like by the woods that I would sell to my parents' friends when they had get-togethers. So I don't know that I knew what I wanted to be, but I definitely had that like entrepreneurial spirit about me from a young age. So
Right. Well, that did your parents' friends feel obligated to buy things from you then?
probably, but I mean, nothing was like super expensive.
Well,
My mom wanted me to be a doctor, so unfortunately, she ended up with two artistic children.
So what was your first job that you remember applying for? Not, so I tell people all the time, the first job that I remember having was I worked in tobacco. And my uncle had got me that job, but clearly the only thing they required me to do was be able to move things around and lift things and plant things and everything else. But so that one didn't require an application. So I want to know what job is you remember having to first apply for that you had to fill out an application for.
So when I was 15, I told my parents that I wanted to get a job, and I worked in the mall food court at a
Oh, awesome.
Chinese restaurant. Yep.
How was
And
it?
I worked there for several, maybe like a year or two. I don't know. There were some shady practices going on in terms of how it was run. So,
Well, that's awesome. So, I
so
mean,
that was technically my first job that required an application, was getting paid under the table as a server at a mall food court restaurant.
oh, well, fantastic.
Yeah.
So there we go. Moving ahead to you becoming a photographer, and kind of the process of getting into that, oh, and I know your path is a little bit different. So, and I do want you to talk about that. So what are the educational requirements for the work that you do now as a photographer, if there
Sure.
are any?
So I would say that there's no technical like degree or training required to be a photographer. But as someone who's self-employed doing what I do, you definitely need a wide array of skill sets to like be a small business owner, especially if you work by yourself. So when I went to the University of Kentucky, I knew I wanted to be a photographer, but I started out at the newspaper. I worked in public relations. I was on the student activities board. Like I was really exploring a lot of different things as a college student. I even started out in the College of Agriculture. And then I ended up in marketing because as I was getting more serious as a photographer in college, I was like, okay, I think my path is that I'm going to work for myself. So I'm going to study marketing so that I know how to bring business to me. And I'll have the skill sets that I'm figuring out through different experiences. And then I can pay people to do things that I don't know how to do, which for me is mainly the financial aspect of accounting. I pay for certain programs to make my life easier, that kind of thing. So,
Right. Okay. So tell me about the work that you do. I mean, you're a portrait and wedding photographer. So tell me about that, about what you do.
Yeah. So my type of photography is really more in the business of people. Like I photograph real everyday people all the time. And photography is kind of an intimate experience, especially in modern times where we all have cameras and we can kind of curate on our own, like how we look and how we present ourselves to the world. I think a lot of people, when they show up for photo shoots, are anxious because they're not in control of that process anymore when someone else is photographing them. So a lot of it is just like being in tune to human behavior and making people feel comfortable and making sure that they trust you very quickly to photograph them. Um, so, I mean, that's mainly what I do from like I show up at work and work with other people
Right.
aspect. The other side of my job is mainly like computer based in terms of marketing myself and communicating with clients and editing pictures and doing that part.
Okay. So what are, and I want to do challenges first because,
Okay.
I want to end on a positive note there. So what are some of the
Okay.
challenges of your job or your business?
There's a lot. I think as a small business owner, as I am as a photographer, I do every aspect of my business. So like I am my boss, I am my secretary, like I show up and do the work, I do the post processing stuff. So one of the challenges is like balancing all the different tasks required in this job. Like I don't just wake up every day and go push a button on my camera and then come home and set my bag down and be like, well, work was great today.
Mhm.
Like that's only a really small part of what I do. So when you have to hold so many roles, you have to recognize your strengths and weaknesses and figure out really where to focus a lot of your time. Like there's always tasks that have to be done. But I know I'm really good at like blogging pictures, for example. So I focus a lot of time on doing that because it will bring me more business kind of thing. Other challenges in being self-employed are that there's no guarantee of how much money you're going to make. In my profession, you pretty much interview for your job over and over and over again. Like when I sit down with a couple who's interested in having me photograph their wedding, that is a job interview. And not every couple chooses me. And so I know that that's part of the process. Um, but it can be difficult to like, you kind of go through the same process every single time, sometimes like 50 times a year. So it's kind of a crazy part of this profession that a lot of people don't think of in that way. I made some notes. So if I look over, I'm referencing some things that I
That's
said.
fine.
The other part of my job is that, especially for wedding work, like my life books far in advance. So I'm committing to 20 to 30 weekends a year in advance. So it's hard. I sacrifice a lot of events with friends or family that happen on the weekends or in evenings because that's when the large majority of my job happens. So even though it seems like everyone goes to work from 9 to 5, there are a lot of careers that don't hold that traditional schedule, and that is a challenge of mine. So
I mean, and
I was like, I could go on. I have more. I don't
oh
know how.
no, I mean, like, I want, one of the things, and we talked about this a little bit before, is what I want out of these is more than anything is for a young person to be able to, if they're thinking right now, whether that be a middle schooler or high school or even elementary or however old, I mean, maybe an adult that's looking to do something, that if they see these videos, that they, can at least begin to understand some of the most basic parts of it. And
Yeah,
so if there's more, I mean, if there's challenges that you feel like that are gonna help young people or whoever make a decision about, hey, is this a career path that I think I should go down? These are some of the challenges I need to know ahead of time. I mean, it may have been something that, I mean, when you were starting out, if you heard, hey, these are some of the challenges, I mean, you could have prepared ahead of time for that. So whatever it is
yeah,
that you have, I'm more than willing to listen. And I think somebody who might be interested in your career would also be willing to listen and hear what you have to say about that.
yeah. The only other thing I would say is that this job takes a lot of self-motivation. Like you have to be a self-starter, because when you wake up and you're like at home, you don't have a boss that's like, all right, here's what we're trying to accomplish today, or like, here's what you need to get done. There's no one giving you like progress reports or checking in with you every few months to see like how your job is doing. So you really kind of have to wake up every day and know like, okay, my goals for today are to like get this edited, or I'm focusing on emails today, or I have a lot of shoots this week, so I really just need to be well rested and have my gear charged and like be able to show up for my clients in that way. So that's, if you're someone that kind of likes to go to work and put their head down and go home, then having a job like this isn't a good fit for you.
Right.
So
On the other side of that, so those are some of the challenges of the job. So what are some of the joys of what you do?
yeah, so self-employment can ruin a lot of people because you do become your own boss. So I am relatively in control of saying yes to work or saying no to work. Again, the counter side of that is I don't always know when work is going to come. But if I am fortunate enough to book weddings in advance, I can look at my calendar and see where I have open places. So I have a lot of flexibility in being able to travel and spend my time how I want. Like a lot of my free time is during the day from 9 to 5. So like going shopping is very easy, or enjoying things that a lot of people do on their weekends, I can do on weekdays when stuff's less crowded and more enjoyable in that way. From the work I create aspect, a joy is that I know I'm creating work that's valuable to people. And in a way, it only becomes more valuable over time. And I feel like there's very few professions where that's the case. Like on a deep personal level, the work that I create is meaningful. So that definitely helps when I get to certain seasons, like in November and December, where everyone wants pictures for Christmas cards and wants photos to give as gifts and that kind of thing. I'm like, be grateful that you have a job where people care and want these things so much, because they want them to give as gifts, and that's really special. So
Right.
flexibility and knowing I'm creating work that has value to people are my biggest joys.
That's wonderful. And I brag about you all the time, and brag
Oh,
about the career that you have. Everybody would know this, that I talk to generally, is that I'm pretty regularly reach out to Sabrina if I have some sort of dumb photography question, and she can answer it pretty quickly for me. So I'm not saying that she is going to do that all the time, but she's constantly teaching me. I wish I would have been able to give as much back to her as she has to me when she was younger. But so for someone who is interested in your career field, what are some things that they can do on the front end to kind of prepare themselves if this is something in a career that they do want to pursue?
for sure. So I think in modern times, it's amazing with camera phones. Is my first thing, and even when I was starting out, was just always have a camera on you. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter how good of a camera it is. It's just, there's a saying in the photography world that the best camera you have is the one that's available to you. So if that means it's your phone, if that means it's a point and shoot camera, or like a parent's fancy camera that they let you walk around with, just create a lot of images and pay attention to what draws you. Like, is it people? Is it landscapes? Like, are you drawn to sports and action stuff? Do you like to just be a fly on the wall and kind of document things as they're happening? Or do you like to be in control and put people in certain spots? Recognizing what you like to photograph, like what you're drawn to, can help you kind of figure out like how to be better at those things. And then I always encourage people to like watch a lot of movies, pay attention to light and color. Um, so much of what makes someone go from a photographer to a professional is understanding light and color. Like that's really how you can differentiate an amateur from a professional. So that's like great places to start. Just take a lot of pictures, pay attention to what you like to photograph, and study light and color. And that can come into other things too, not only movies, but art. just looking at photographs that you like and asking yourself, what is it about this image that I like? Is it the way it makes me feel? Is it the colors? Is it that there are people in it? Is it that there are no people in it? Is it that the lines are really interesting to you if it's architecture or interiors? Like just figuring out why images are interesting to you is the best thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then finally, of course, I want to make this appropriate for kids. And so, what about youth opportunities in your field? Are there opportunities for kids to be involved, and what are some avenues for them to do so?
Sure. We live in a very visual world right now, like images, video, advertising, like all of that is very important. We're exposed to thousands and thousands of images on a daily basis. So finding a way to be involved in it really is just find a way to be involved in a visual medium of any kind. Like any of that will help if you want to be a photographer. Like taking pictures is obviously important, but if there's video classes, I think video in the next like 5 years will become even more important than taking still images. So knowing how to do that in addition to photography is a huge skill set. Especially young people, like kids pick up on those skills so easily that if there's a way to learn how to take video and edit video, that's like huge. But yeah, just expose yourself to as many visual things as possible. Art classes, video, pay attention to storytelling in movies and TV shows. Like notice how they frame things. Like that's a really great, I do that all the time when I'm watching TV. Like you'll notice they start with like the outside of a building, and then maybe you're in the room, and then it focuses closer on the person talking, and they go back and forth with those different framing techniques all the time. And it's a great way from a visual standpoint to learn how to tell a story by just watching TV and movies. So and then from that point, just blogging or sharing your work. Like if you shoot with your phone, or you shoot with a camera and you're learning to edit, share your stuff on a blog or on social media. So many of my most formative opportunities came because I just put pictures on the internet and people saw them and reached out to me. Like my many opportunities at UK came that way. Many opportunities to like photograph weddings in exotic locations, like all that kind of stuff came from just sharing what I was able to do, and people saw it and connected with it, or connected with me and gave me an opportunity. So hopefully that's a good answer. I know
No, that's a great answer. Obviously, I encourage kids that as we have things that come up in 4-H, that if you are interested in photography, we do have projects and things that you can get involved in with through 4-H. But any opportunity to get out there, there's photo contests and there's things that you can do. There's all kinds of opportunities to be involved, and I think Sabrina has really given us a few additional ways that you can think of. Don't think about an experience, if you're sitting and watching television, for it to be just a passive experience, but it can be a learning opportunity too. So, that's all the questions that I have. Sabrina, is there anything else, random that you want to tell us about what you do? I'm always incredibly impressed by Sabrina, and it's seriously Sabrina photography.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And she does really amazing work. And so, anything else, Sabrina, that you want to say?
It came to me like just now.
Okay.
So one other thing is that communication is really important. So just learning how to, like, for example, a lot of people check in with me with pictures all the time of like, hey, we did pictures last week, just curious when they're going to be done, that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people can feel really anxious from things like that. And a lot of people want to ignore stuff like that, especially if they're behind. But communicating with people has been so valuable for me to learn. Of people just want to hear from you. So if you are in a place where you're learning, or you do a photo shoot with someone and maybe you weren't super proud of the work, or things came up in your personal life and people are like, oh, where are these things? Like, why aren't you doing this faster? To just always communicate with people. Like, that's, people just want to hear from you, even if it's, hey, life's been really hard right now, I'm behind, it's going to take me a few extra days. Like, that's perfect. Just don't ignore talking to people, especially as you're learning and stuff, because I think a lot of people get in trouble in that way. Like, they worry that they're not being enough and they just don't communicate that that's how they're feeling, and
Right.
that, like, what people think of you matters as much as the work you create. So it's important to communicate with people and not shy away from talking to people. So
Okay.
communication is important.
That's great. That's great. Well, Sabrina, as always, I always enjoy talking to you, and I really do appreciate you coming on. And so, like I said, this is Sabrina Hounshell, and she is a professional portrait and wedding photographer. And I am Eric Comley, the Garrett County 4-H Youth Development Agent. And this has been 4-H Career Conversations. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.